hosts in an unprecedented event. The governments of Ireland, Norway and Spain have announced they will recognize an independent Palestinian state beginning on the 28th of May. These were the scenes inside the Spanish parliament in just the past hour. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said his country had an obligation to act. Sanchez accused Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of putting the two-state solution in danger with his policy of pain and destruction in Gaza.
Therefore, those of us who defend human rights and an international order based on rules are obliged to act in Ukraine and in Palestine without double standards. We are obliged to do what we can, send humanitarian help as we are, supporting refugees and the displaced, but also using all our political levers that we have at reach to say we will not allow the destruction of a two-state solution, the only fair solution to this terrible conflict. For that reason, I want to communicate to you that after agreeing with the two parties who are in the progressive coalition government and echoing the sentiments of the majority of the Spanish people, next Tuesday, Spain, at its cabinet, will recognize Palestine.
Well, Ireland's Prime Minister says the decision is the right thing to do and that 3 decades after the Oslo process, we are further than ever from a sustainable peace settlement. Take a listen.
Our step today, taken with Norway and Spain, is a further recognition of the legitimate right to statehood. It is a statement of unequivocal support for a two-state solution, the only credible path to peace and security for Israel, for Palestine, and for their peoples. We have previously said that recognition is a step we would ideally have taken as part of a process towards that goal. However, we are 3 decades after the Oslo process, and perhaps further than ever from a just, sustainable, and comprehensive peace settlement. Our decision to recognise Palestine should not have to wait indefinitely, especially when it is the right thing to do. It is a decision being taken on its merits, but we cannot ignore the fact that we are taking it as Palestinians in Gaza are enduring the most appalling suffering, hardship, and starvation.
And Norway's Prime Minister says a Palestinian state is a prerequisite for achieving peace in the Middle East.
En palestinsk stat forpliktet I tråd med folkeretten.
Recognition of Palestine is in support of moderate forces that are on a retreating front in a protracted and cruel conflict. This is an investment in the only solution that can bring lasting peace in the Middle East. It is a strong call to other countries to do the same as we are doing today, to recognize Palestine and thereby ensure that the process towards a two-state solution can only start again and gain a new momentum. In the midst of a war with tens of thousands of dead and injured, we must keep alive the only thing that can provide a safe home for both Israelis and Palestinians.
Well, we have correspondents to bring you all the latest developments and reactions to this story. In a moment, we'll be speaking to Imran Khan in Amman, Jordan, who have reaction from the Israeli government. Nida Ibrahim is standing by in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank for the Palestinian Authority's reaction. But first, we go to London and Willem Marx. And tell us more, Willem, about these European countries, Spain, Ireland, Norway, recognizing Palestine as an independent state. What led to this decision?
Well, Folly, this has been a series of ongoing discussions between a number of European leaders, and at least 2 of them today have talked about the fact that others are likely to follow. Over the last few months, these leaders have been coordinating quite discreetly amongst each other, occasionally making public statements about their plans. But in terms of what's happened today in Ireland, they call this a historic and important day for the country and for Palestine. That's according to the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister, Simon Harris. He said that each of these countries will now, quote, undertake whatever national steps are necessary to give effect to the decision, i.e. the formalities of making this actually concrete. And he said he was confident that further countries will join in taking this important step in the coming weeks. The Norwegian Prime Minister we just heard from there, Jonas Gahr, he said today there can be no peace in the Middle East if there is no recognition. Don't forget, this is now more than 30 years on from the Oslo Agreement signed in the Norwegian capital back in 1993. Since then, he said, the Palestinians have taken important steps towards a two-state solution. The terror carried out by Hamas he was talking about are not supporters of a two-state solution and the state of Israel. Palestine, he said, has a fundamental right to an independent state. Speaking at a press conference, Pedro Sanchez, then, the Spanish Prime Minister, we heard a lot of applause inside the Spanish Parliament in Madrid earlier. He rejected what he termed the massacre in Gaza and the rest of the Palestinian territories, reiterated his demands for a two-state solution. He said Prime Minister Netanyahu is still turning a blind eye to bombing hospitals, schools and homes. He's using hunger, cold and terror to punish more than 1 million innocent boys and girls. Volley.
Willem, thank you very much. Willem Marks live there in London. Let's head to Ramallah now in the occupied West Bank. Nida Ibrahim is there for us. Nida, what's the reaction from the Palestinian Authority?
Yeah, I'll tell you the reaction from the PLO Secretary General Hussein al-Sheikh, who soon tweeted that these are historical moments, that the world is triumphing for justice and for truth after decades of the Palestinian struggle. Now, if you ask Palestinians in the street, they would tell you that, yes, this is welcomed. Yes, they would love to see more countries in the world showing support and showing hope, really, for a state of their own. But in reality, what does this change on the ground? Little. But on a diplomatic level, you would see the Palestinian Authority considering this as a success of its efforts, as it was for years now trying to get other states to recognize the Palestinian state as part of putting pressure on Israel, specifically after this war that we've been seeing, what's happening inside the besieged Gaza Strip. This is helping advance the Palestinian cause in the world, showing the Israeli aggression, not just on Gaza, but also on all the Palestinian territory. So for Palestinians who are involved in diplomacy, they see it as a success. They see it as something that they can build on. Remember, we're talking about the Palestinian Authority that has tried to advance a membership in the United Nations Security Council. That has not been fruitful at the moment, but they've pushed for years to get a statehood recognition, which they got, and now they are an non-member state status at the United Nations. So all of these efforts are being seen here as a way to put pressure on Israel as an occupying power, as an aggressor, as to what's happening in the occupied West Bank and also in the besieged Gaza Strip. But again, for people, for example, in Jenin now, they're still seeing the Israeli raid unfolding in its second day. They're still suffering the ramifications of the continued Israeli violations against them.
Nida, thank you very much. That's Nida Ibrahim live there in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Well, Israel, as expected, has strongly opposed the move by Ireland, Norway and Spain. Its foreign minister has ordered the immediate recall of its ambassadors to Ireland and Norway. Let's bring in Imran Khan, who's in Amman, Jordan, because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting from within Israel. Talk to us about this reaction from the foreign minister of Israel. What's he had to say, and what more can we expect from Israel in terms of retaliation?
Well, he's leading the charge. He has issued a statement. It talks about the recall of the ambassadors to Norway and Ireland. Expect Israel to also recall its ambassador to Spain as well in the coming hours. He says, I'm sending a clear and unequivocal message to Ireland and Norway. Israel will not remain silent in the face of those undermining its sovereignty and endangering its security. But this next bit is the key real force of the message that will come from the Israelis. Today's decision sends a message to the Palestinians and the world: terrorism pays. After Hamas terror organization carried out the largest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, after committing heinous sexual crimes witnessed by the world, these countries chose to reward Hamas and Iran by recognizing a Palestinian state. Expect that to be the real thrust of everything the Israelis will do. We're expecting that we'll hear similar language from senior Israeli figures, including the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. What can they do about this practically? This was a unilateral recognition, so it's not like they can reverse it or pull out of deal. There is no deal. What they can do is they can put pressure on the US to try and come out with a strong statement condemning this. The US's position, let's find out when that comes and what that actually means for Israel. But right now, again, much like the ICC decision, it'll be about discrediting people. It'll be about going after them. Already the far-right members of the Israeli governing coalition, people like Bezalel Smotrich, have already said we should punish the Palestinian Authority. Now, for this, we should build more settlements in the occupied West Bank. So that's the kind of language that we're hearing, but it's a very clear, very unambiguous statement from Israel's foreign minister, and he's now leading that charge.
Imran, thank you very much. Imran Khan reporting there live from Amman, Jordan, because once again the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from operating within Israel. Let's analyse all this further now with our diplomatic editor, James Bays, who's here on the set with me. James, these are not the first countries to recognise Palestine as a state, but still hugely symbolic and significant.
Not the first. If you actually look at the numbers, and it's quite hard to properly count them, it's something like 139, 140 countries of 193 countries of the member states of the United Nations that recognise Palestine. But some of those were symbolic votes. Some of them were votes by parliaments that the governments haven't really acted on. So it is a little bit of a confusing picture. These are, though, important countries because you've got two important EU countries here. Spain, one of the powerhouses of the EU. Ireland, an important moral voice in the EU. And Norway, another European...
Oslo Peace Accords.
Norway, not an EU country, but the home of the Oslo Peace Accords and a country that has played such a role in the peace process towards two states. And the fact that Norway now believes the only way to get to two states is by recognising not just Israel, but recognising Palestine as well, I think it is an important moment and may well be a signal to others. Those leaders that have spoken today, and we know their positions because they've said things positively about a Palestinian state in the past. In fact, Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain, just weeks ago said that to me here on Al Jazeera. But they're saying that there are other countries that are going to go, that are likely to follow in the near future. That's the important question, I think.
Are other countries going to follow suit, and who might they be?
Well, I think we need to look, because lots of other countries around the world already, as I say, recognise Palestine. So it's a question of the Western countries, I think, that will have an impact here, and the important European countries. Other countries within the EU that I think are relevant right now, Slovenia and Malta, both sit currently on the UN Security Council, both very supportive of Palestinian statehood. We know that from what they've said as there have been efforts for Palestine to become a member state of the UN, what they've said in the Security Council. So those, I think, are strong candidates very soon. Right. Of the big countries in Europe, I don't think Germany anytime soon. Of course, the UK is not in the EU, but although they've talked about it, I don't think, just look at their reaction to the ICC ruling. France is the one to watch, maybe, I think.
Interesting. Now, in terms of Norway, Spain and Ireland, they are recognising Palestine as a state from May the 28th. Practically on the ground, what does that mean? Are they going to be opening up an embassy in Ramallah, for example? What measures are going to follow this recognition?
If you recognise a state, you in some form will have representation of both sides. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have an embassy and a resident ambassador. Lots of countries recognise another country and have an ambassador nearby. For example, they could designate their ambassador in Jordan also to be the representative to Palestine. And most of these countries do already have people who deal directly, envoys that deal with the Palestinian Authority. But I think it may sound like it's only symbolic, but it's not. I think it's pretty historic that they are doing this and that there is a wave going on, particularly in the week that you've seen the ICC decision and as the judges of the International Court of Justice, that other important body, are thinking about an order that South Africa wants to stop the offensive in Rafah.
What impact is this decision by these three countries likely to have on the ongoing war on Gaza, but also on the peace process? We heard some of the leaders there talk about the fact that they hope this will give impetus to the peace process. Will it, you think?
Well, I mean, it is a big question. Their argument is that you legitimize the state of Palestine and you then de facto create the very start of a two-state solution. You actually have now, in the eyes of these three countries, two states. They obviously think that this is the way of pushing things forward. This will be opposed, of course. Just look at what we've seen in the last 48 hours in the US. There's no way. It's
not likely to change the US position in any way.
The only thing that I think is interesting is one of these states is a state that the president listens to, Ireland.
Ireland. Very good. Thank you so much, James, for that. James Ways, our diplomatic editor. With the latest there on this developing story, Ireland, Spain and Norway recognizing Palestine as a state.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.